Welcome back, everyone, and hopefully you're as excited as we are to crack open Root and take a look at what's inside.
Yeah, we're finally cracking the box open here on camera. So shrink wrap's already been removed. Have already had a look inside and had a look at the rules and everything, but now we're actually really gonna go through all the components on camera here. And yeah, the bags of pieces and everything. Haven't opened those. Haven't opened the cards. So yeah, this will be. I'm really excited.
Yeah, let's get to it. All right, so here's Root.
Yeah, so we'll get a nice close up on the cover here. All four factions depicted on the cover in the corners, really nicely laid out. Big fan of what they've done with the logo. It's colorful, it's flavorful. The game is by Cole Hurley, and the art's by Kyle Farron. So we'll quick look at the sides of the box. There's the Erie. There's the Marquise de Cat. Over here, you have the standard board game box elements. You'll have your there is the player count, the age range, so that's listed as 10 plus, player count 2 to 4, and then the average duration of the game, which here is an hour to an hour and a half. On this side, we have the Vagabond. On the underside, or if the game's rested upright, on the underside, we have those numbers there again, and the Woodland Alliance. The back of the box, as you can see, the game has a number of accolades already. It came out 2018, I believe, and since then it's already accrued quite the collection of awards. The 2018 Golden Geek Award and the 2018 Best Game of the Year from the Dice Tower. So some quite notable ones. So really cool to see there. This being the latest printing of the core game here. So they've included the rewards it's gotten since it came out. You have a number of quotes on the back. Accolades, positive things being said of the game from a number of different sources there. All four factions depicted on the back as well in the pieces: the Erie, the Woodland Alliance, the Vagabond, and the Marquise de Cat. All four are also listed here. You get a little bit of flavor on what each of them are if you just are picking up this game in a board game store. Just Marquise de Cat, dominate the woods, extracting its riches and policing its inhabitants. The Erie Dynasty, regain control of the woods while keeping your squabbling court at bay. Woodland Alliance, gather supporters and coordinate revolts against the ruling regime. And of course, last but not least, the Vagabond, seek fame and fortune as you forge alliances and rivalries with the other players. So, enough about the box. Let's finally open this up and see what's inside. So right off the bat, right at the top here, we have a small guide walking through Root. This is an extended example of play. I've flipped through it myself, read the first half of it, and it's quite useful. This is really useful for a group that perhaps is a little bit newer to games. If not every player has read the rules, or if maybe the person who has just bought in the game, if you just picked up this game and board games are a bit of a newer hobby for you, a newer activity, maybe you're not as comfortable explaining the rules to everyone. This walkthrough through Root, an extended example of play, will take you through the first 2 turns of the game for each of the 4 factions. Don't worry, if you don't have 4 players for this game and you're at 3, someone can just cover the 2. And by the end of those 2 turns, the players should feel fairly comfortable with the system and the mechanics of the game. So this is a useful tool. You certainly don't have to use it by any means if everyone you play with just wants to read the rules, or if you feel really comfortable just explaining the game. I do really like that they include this, though.
Yeah, what I will say about extended examples of play is that they're nice to have if they are actually extended. So, in any game with any degree of complexity, there may be a point where there's either confusion or disagreement about what a written rule means. And when you can look at the extended example of play and see how that action is resolved correctly, that can be very nice.
Yeah, I think also too, sometimes even myself reading the rules, you have a general understanding of something, but there might just be a certain mechanic in the game where it's like, I get what this is, but I don't really kind of understand how this is happening or how I begin doing this, and just this is, you literally follow it through. I'll open it up here just to flip it to a page. For example, we have here turn 1 for the Woodland Alliance, and it'll actually take you right through. There's some really useful strategy guides as well, like why could I actually, sorry, that's not strategy, but there will be like little blurbs of advice, like should you do this, is this the most optimal move. Sometimes they'll be like no, but like you're learning some of the mechanics through these things. There'll be nice little explanations on, for example, here, why could I place the sympathy card there. It'll just explain. You have some visual examples as well, like here's where I put the supporter cards, and it's just really nice. It's a nice colorful booklet. We'll flip to the next page. We have, sorry, I should just go back to the beginning and flip through it quickly. This will just have it setting up, explaining the walkthrough. Turn 1 for the Marquise, so they'll be going first. Turn 1 for the Erie there. Turn 1 for the Woodland Alliance, as we already saw. Turn 1 for the Vagabond, and then they're also going to have the second turn for each of them. So you can just play through following the instructions, going through the phases of the game. Birdsong, daylight, well, sorry, these are all daylight. Birdsong, daylight, and evening. So then going through again, Erie, Woodland Alliance, and Vagabond. So you'll get to the end. All players should be a little more familiar with the system of the game. You could just keep playing the game from there, or you could even just then go back and restart, and you're familiar with how the turns go. Next up, we have the Learn to Play. So this is actually just the general rules of the game. The Learn to Play, if you are the person who's purchased Root, even if you're just following the Learn to Play, I would still recommend you read this before you go to play with your friends. It will be really useful to have a good handle on what's going on, what the rules of the game are, and it'll create a bit, it's okay to forget or have to reference the rules or something, but it will create a bit of a smoother experience if you have read through this as well. So I would certainly recommend doing that. And
yeah, I'm a fan of everyone reading a Learn to Play, but know your own group and what people are willing to do.
Yeah, no, certainly. I think if everyone is willing to do that, that's helpful. It's not tremendously long either, but I know there's certainly a lot of groups where people maybe aren't as invested in doing that, and that's okay. You have the extended example of play, but I would certainly recommend someone being really familiar with this. So you have the Learn to Play guide. You have a nice table of contents here. And we'll just leaf through this real quickly. We won't get into the nitty-gritty of anything, but just so that you can see what the Learn to Play guide looks like. It's fairly long. It is actually it's 23 pages, but honestly, there's not a ton of text on each page, and they have a lot of really useful examples of the rules they've described as well.
The last page is the winter map as well, which you don't need to read for your first game.
And another nice thing too is that, sorry, I'll just flip to a bit later in the book. There is a page covering each of the factions. So for example, for my first game, perhaps I have chosen to play, actually let's use this example. Perhaps I've chosen to play the Erie Dynasties. So for myself, maybe if my friend has bought this game, like I could just read these 2 pages so I understand my actions really well, and then the player who's playing the Marquise de Cat could read theirs, and so on. Like I said, I do recommend someone reading all of it, but each player could perhaps even just read their own examples in addition to maybe some general things at the beginning, or you could just explain that. So Woodland Alliance, you have the Vagabond. The Vagabond, there is the most going on. As you'll notice, there's a few pages dedicated to the Vagabond. And then, like Hal said, there is, well, this page, dominance cards, an interesting alternative way through which you can win. Instead of getting to 30 points, you could get one of these dominance cards in play, and it will change your own win condition. So the dominance cards are really interesting. I think that's adding a lot to the game. Is my early impression. So this page is quite interesting and important, is the faction combinations. So while you can play Root with any number of different factions, certainly when you're newer to the game, I would recommend following the recommended guidelines, what they suggest. The ones with the torches are the ones they suggest the most highly in terms of just the interactions you'll get between the factions. Those are the best for someone who's learning the game. So if you're playing with 2, you can put the Marquise de Cat against the Erie, and that will probably be the optimal first game. 3 players, you have 2 options, so 1 player playing each of those, and then the 3rd player could play the Vagabond or the Woodland Alliance, whichever one they like the look or flavor of more. And 4 players, you're just using all 4, of course. So like Hal said, the winter map here. And then just some useful player reference kind of piece glossary, just general details on the back. So then now we get on to the law of root. So this I'm not gonna go through extensively. Really, if you are familiar with some of the other games we've covered on our channel, the LCGs, think of this as somewhat of a rules reference guide, which is really what it is for a board game here. So you have really more of the nitty-gritty card interactions, rules questions. Any thoughts on the law of root?
No, I mean, if you're the typical player, this is a book you may never look at until there's an argument about a rule situation that's happened in a game, and then you pull it out and you use the index or you flip through it.
Yeah, exactly. This is honestly something, really, if you're watching this video and you're new to Root, don't be intimidated by this book here. It's really not something that you have to read through. It has even sections on factions which come in the expansions. For example, we don't even have this expansion. It's the Underground Duchy here. There's a section on them. So it's a really good resource for players who are really kind of deep into the game and like looking into more nuanced interactions. But like you said, the general player, don't be put off from the game by this sort of more bigger booklet of rules here. It really isn't something you have to read to play, unless, like Hal said, there's some kind of rules dispute, and you can just whip this out and find the relevant section. So you don't have to read through this whole thing. Don't be intimidated by that. It'll really just be the learn to play, and you can dive into your game. So, ready to dive into the actual contents?
Oh yeah.
All right, yeah, it's about time we get to it. So we have, I'll lay these actually out nicely on the table here. The game comes with 4 player boards, 1 for each faction. The top one is the first one is the Vagabond there. The Erie Dynasties. The Marquise de Cat. And the Woodland Alliance. So these player boards are really useful. Each player is going to get their respective player board based on the faction they're playing. It will have all their faction rules printed on the board. The boards are sturdy. These aren't just some kind of flimsy paper. It is an actual board. It's good quality. As you can see, there's some element of thickness to it. It feels nice. There's some nice art on it. You get the theme flavor, even like in the turn sequence, the phases, birdsong, daylight, evening, just nice graphic depictions of those. It's very clean. It's a really nice look. So when you sit down to play and you're handing out, let's say you're there with 3 of your friends and you're ready to play Root. You're ready to dive into your first game. So you're gonna hand out the player boards. Maybe one of your friends says, "Hey, you know what? The Vagabond, that looks really cool. I want to go off on the quest and I want to kind of do my own thing here." So you'll hand them their player board and you can flip it over, and there will be a nice, useful couple paragraphs of text on advice of playing the Vagabond. So it'll explain kind of what the Vagabond is, what you're trying to do, the general theme flavor, and then like things to look out for, your strengths, weaknesses, as those kind of things. It'll give you some really useful advice, especially for some of your earlier games. I would certainly read over that. This is useful here as well. You have the complexity. So perhaps maybe in your group you have a couple players who are a lot more familiar with board games, and I'll flip all of these over here. So I would recommend giving yourself, if you're really comfortable with the rules, I would actually say, and you're playing with a 4-player game, I might say perhaps take on the at least based off of their advice, having not played the game yet myself, but at least from their advice, I would say you're probably going to want to take the Woodland Alliance for yourself, as this is, at least in their opinion, the highest complexity of the 4 factions. And then there's complexity, aggression, card wealth, and crafting ability. So maybe one of your friends, you know what, they're not as into aggression and the fighting as much. So I guess, well, actually, that's going to be all the factions. But the Erie are high, so you're probably not going to be handing them off the Erie. All the other 3 are moderate. Any thoughts on the player boards here?
Well, it's worth noting that the setup instructions are on the player's board, so it's right there for you. You don't have to go into the rule book.
Yeah, and it's not I think what's really nice about these boards is, even though that they're fairly sizable, if you have friends who maybe aren't as into kind of a lot of pre-game like rules and things they have to read through, there's not actually a ton of text on these. Like, they're divided nicely. Here you see there's 5 points to set up. Some of them are literally just a quick like sentence or 2 even. It's not an overwhelming amount of text. Well, there's just nice graphs, sort of graphics. And then on the front you have, like your nice breakdown of your turn sequence. You have spots where you're going to put your items. We'll flip over the Erie Dynasty here because there's some interesting things going on there. This is where they'll set up their court. They'll put the cards right above here: recruit, move, battle, and build. Any thoughts on their court, kind of how you build that?
The decree, you mean?
Or the decree, yeah. But it is the court. It's called the court that you're setting up. It's like their court of, because it's the court gets deposed if you don't fulfill the decree. And then you have a spot where you're going to put your leader card. So you're going to get a leader card for those. And yeah, I think there's a lot more going on these boards. We're not going to dive into it any further than that, unless you have any just kind of last thoughts on that.
No.
All right, let's move along and get to the actual game board. So there's a nice actual. I will say the boards are a little hard to get out of the box. When they were in here, this is actually something I noticed right away, is that the box is packed so tightly that it's actually kind of hard to get them out. I actually recommend just picking it up and tipping the box a bit, and you can just grab them out. The rules here, it kind of is stuck up on some of the tokens that shifted or cards, but there is a nice like little indent there that you can just slide your finger in to get the board out. And let's set up this board, and you can see the size of it and just what the board looks like with the victory track and everything. And this is actually my first time unfolding the board here, so this is even all new for me. These are first impressions of seeing it in person. So the board, like any new game board, is not quite flat out, but that will be with pretty well any new game. That'll flatten out over time through use. So it's already actually pretty good. I've seen new game boards that are more kind of stuck on their ridges and everything. So this is actually already quite flat. And yeah, first impressions are really good. I think this is a nice, sizable game board. It's not overly large, but it's not really small. Like, it's not going to be difficult to see the pieces or components on it, really. I think it's actually just a really nice size. You have the victory track on the bottom where you're going to put your counters, and it's the first player to reach 30 points, as we mentioned, that will be the winner of the game. And something to keep in mind on the board too is that each one of the clearings, as Hal mentioned, the forces of the Woodland Alliance, the Erie, and the Marquise de Cat their troops will only be able to go in the clearings and move along the paths. The paths are really easily kind of marked by their pebbles. It's very clear where they are. The clearings will also all have one of 3 types. So this is the this is a mouse clearing, and it is orange. And actually a really nice feature that I didn't even pick up right away, but I saw it in the rules, is that the color of the trees in the clearing will actually be indicative of the type of clearing. So every fox clearing has red trees. Every rabbit or bunny clearing has yellow trees, and every mouse clearing has orange. So even if I'm sitting back and it's a big table and there's maybe you're playing with the expansion, you have 6 people, even if I'm sitting a fair distance back, I can immediately easily see which of the 3 types each clearing is. Even if I'm standing like back from the table, I can really clearly see what each type is. I can understand the game board, the where people's troops are.
And the different colorings are also indicative of it being the autumn board.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, you have your red leaves, your yellows, your orange. So yeah, really nice colors. I like the board a lot. The river flows through the board. The river is really nice. You can see it looks like it's either an ocean or a lake in just kind of off the bottom left corner there. And that's the river is flowing into the mainland from there. Yeah, this is I really like the aesthetic of this. I think it's really nice. You have where the items at the beginning of the game you're going to place there. There are 12 of them, as you can see. So these are the items which players can craft, and then the vagabond can trade cards with them for their crafted items. So there's 12 possible items that can be crafted. Those are little tokens, chits, if you will, and those will be placed right there at the beginning of the game. So actually, I was about to move on, but let's check out the winter board.
Well, one thing before you do is that these spaces denote where the 3 factions that are not the Vagabond can construct buildings. So in the clearings, there is a certain amount of squares, varies from 1 to 3 per clearing.
Yeah.
And that's just the open spots for you to build buildings.
Yeah, that's a really good point. You would have to destroy an opponent's building if you want to build one in a clearing that its spots are already full. So it's an interesting mechanic that it caps there. It doesn't permit the board to get into some crazy state where there's 6 different buildings, who's. It's just keeps it kind of nice and clean in that way. Ready to flip to the winter side?
Yep.
Okay, so we'll flip the board over. And what is it about the winter side? I believe the rules mention that this is more for slightly more advanced players.
Yeah, that's because the clearing types are not predetermined. As you can see, there's no little animals denoted by the clearing, and there are tokens that come with the game that allow you to randomize that by placing them face down. So on game start, you're not necessarily going to know what kind of type of clearing each is, and that's just going to create interesting strategic opportunities because maybe now you have 4 fox clearings in a cluster, and you can do something interesting with that.
It's one of those interesting features of I feel as though a lot of maybe newer games coming out in more recent years are having that there is that element of variance that I think adds a nice level or layer of replayability to the game in terms of you're forcing players to adapt to where the clearings have now been placed, as opposed to coming in with a set idea of where the clearings are and like a clear just set strategy of what they're going to do. This forces them to adapt a little bit to where the clearings are placed, but it'll add some more variance.
Yeah, so to use an example of a common game, if your only option was to use the autumn side of the board, it would be equivalent to playing Settlers of Catan on like the balanced starter map every time you played that game. And I think you would quickly figure out like where strong areas are.
Yeah, I think like this is a game where there's enough going on, and the asymmetry to it will still give you a wealth and multitude of different experiences on the autumn board that you'll get a ton of really good play and value out of that. But I like that they've included this and given you a second option, not only on aesthetic, but also the fact that the new aesthetic offers more variance, and I think will be really rewarding for players that have dove a fair amount deeper into Root.
Yeah, the only mechanical change, apart from that the aforementioned lack of clearing designation, is that the river now counts as a path because it's frozen over. So there's actually a little more movement on this board in theory.
Yeah, that's interesting. No, that's really interesting. I wonder how So I imagine, well, we you know what? I was going to comment on the Riverfolk expansion and the Riverfolk company and how they can move on the river, but that's getting ahead of ourselves. Stay tuned for a future video on that. So we'll flip back to the autumn side, as this will be the one you're certainly going to be playing in your first game. And any more thoughts on the board? Or
Nope.
Okay, so let's get into the components here. So we have just a couple.
Well, and these are the ones you would use to denote the winter side of the board. Can you just flip it over? I assume they're all the same color on the reverse side.
Yeah.
No.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, they're the winter color.
Yeah. So you don't know what's going where.
Yeah, no, it's gonna be, it says in the rules, it's completely random, and then you reveal them all at once you put one on each clearing, so you don't know what's gonna happen. And these are where are the victory markers? Okay, yeah, here they are. They're just not all next to each other. So, you know what, let's pop one of these out. Actually, we'll pop the 4 victory markers out. Victory point markers. The Vagabonds is not, oh, there it is. For some reason it's on the second sheet here, just based on color, I think. So these are gonna be what's keeping track of your points. They fit perfectly on the track, and you can see how close each player is to 30 points, 30 victory points. What's nice is that even if you're sitting kind of at a distance, even without seeing the exact number, I mean, obviously you will want to go see how many points they are away, but even just at a quick glance, you can kind of see how each player is currently doing, the biggest threats to win, who you want to watch out for the most, maybe who you want to target. So I like the way they've laid that out there. Those are really nice. These are just your typical cardboard game pieces. Nothing too notable about that. They're very easy to punch out. They punch out really nicely. There's no, you know, sometimes you punch the things out of cardboard and there's big sort of ridges, or like the pieces that were attached are kind of peeling out the sides. No, these are able to be punched out really nicely. Nice clean look to the tokens. Typical cardboard tokens though, nothing too notable about that. They're nice, different colors. You have a lot of options. You have the wood for the Marquise de Cat, their keep. This keep token is going to be important. That's going to be used in every game, as the Marquise de Cat is going to set that keep token down, and I believe the keep token cannot be removed. And there's another rule, I think, is that other players can't build on the spot with the keep token. So that will be certainly a really important one. Let's get on to the pieces. This is probably something you're waiting for. And whereas some games have cardboard tokens for the pieces, personally, I'm really happy that Root hasn't done that. Root actually has nice wooden game pieces, and I think that really enhances the experience of the game. Some games will have those like cardboard tokens as their army pieces or characters or whatnot, but these, they're 3-dimensional, they're wooden, they're sturdy, they have a nice feel to them. They're actually lighter. They're actually a lot lighter than I would have expected, honestly.
I will say it's unfortunate it doesn't come in like a bag that's sealable. That's obviously just a bag for storage, while in the box you're gonna have to get some kind of Ziploc bag to store these.
Yeah, and that is something of note. That means they are sort of you're purchasing this game, and there's the underlying expectation that you're gonna find your own way to store. I mean, you
do get a big Ziploc that they're all in,
which, I mean, really you could just dump them all into that.
But that's a little annoying. Like,
oh, you know,
ideally
we were wrong. We were wrong. They were thinking ahead.
That's good.
And they have a multitude of plastic bags in here. Maybe not a multitude, but certainly enough for the game components. So that complaint out the window. The designers of the game here and Letter Games Company were thinking ahead, and they've included that. I think that's really nice they did that. There's the dice here. So crack these open. They're sealed, so you know. It's actually fairly difficult to get these open. There we go. They're sealed, so the dice are not beat up or anything. They're really fresh. And I don't know how many sides there actually are to this, but a lot. Actually, I could 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
I think it's a D12.
Yeah, it's a D12.
It's a D12, but it's not numbered as a D12. It's numbered with only 0, 1, 2, and 3.
Yeah, so the dice feel nice. They roll nicely. I think it's cool that it is a 12. I think it just makes it feel a little more unique. Yeah, I'm pleased with the dice. That's actually better than I was expecting for the dice there.
They are big, which is usually nice.
I think when you're only max going to be rolling 2 of them, I think it's not like you're not going to have.
Well, no, the bigger problem is if you have someone who rolls in a erratic fashion and starts knocking game components off.
Yeah, like if they just kind of flung them across the board, sorta. Yeah, I mean, honestly, that's more of just.
That's a problem with the player.
Yeah, that's nothing to do with the game itself. There is the Vagabond. So if you're playing the Vagabond, this will be your 1 game piece there, and the Vagabond can roam around. As we as you mentioned before, the Vagabond can actually go into the forest, which is really cool that he's the only one that can do that. He's really nimble, agile. He can give the authorities the slip. The Woodland Alliance here are green, so they're mice here. And we'll get to the Marquise the cat, who actually have the most pieces. And while you're checking out the pieces there, I'll just get the cards open so we can have a look at those. The cards are sealed really tightly, so they are going to be difficult to open, but that should be fine. It just might take a minute or so. There we go. Actually, even as we mentioned, or will mention, the box is really nice. Even the interior has a nice design, a clean aesthetic to it. Really brings in the theme and the flavor of that you're in the woodland and these creatures are vying for control of the woodland. I think the game has a really rich theme. So these are the player cards. These are your typical standard size cards. Nice backs to them.
See, there's really nice art on the cards, and the card effect is explained at the bottom. You can also see that some things are noted on the cards.
Yeah, and you could talk about the top left corner. That's the symbol that's depicted there is important.
Yeah, so that's the suit of the card. So you've got bird, which is the wild card. You've got fox.
Yeah, so these card packs are sealed really tightly. So the cards they come nicely sealed. They're going to be in really good condition, but they are hard to open. Be careful when you're opening them.
Here you've got rabbit.
Yeah, and these are color coded as is the game board clearings, so it's really nice that they're all color coded in that way.
And then you've got Mouse here as the final suit.
Yeah, and the cards, a lot of them will serve dual purposes in terms of you can craft them, which is for the cost there on the wood, and you'll get that ability and that item in the victory points, or as Hal mentioned, they can be used for the suit up there. So I like when games have cards that sort of have a dual purpose. I think it adds to the wealth of options you have as a player when you have a hand of cards that each one can potentially serve a different purpose. So the leaders are here. Here are the Erie leaders. I'll grab their player board. You can see where the leader card will go. The leader card is going to fit perfectly in that space there. And we won't get into too many of the details of the game here, but there are circumstances where the Erie court can be purged and the leader deposed. So then you will put a new leader card there. And as the Erie, you actually have 4 different ones. So hopefully your court is not getting purged more than that. There's the loyal Viziers. I believe you start with 2 of them out, and those will go on the decree up here. If you're, you know what, maybe you're looking at this and you're like, get the Erie out of here. I want to play the Vagabond. I want to go questing and find items. Well, don't worry, because you have 3 different options to play, even as the Vagabond as your character card. So even if you really like the Vagabond and you play the Vagabond 3 games in a row, you can have a different experience with that character each time. And in the way the game is played, you'll have a different experience anyway, but it's just adding even a further layer to that, in that you can actually play a different character with a different ability each time. And you can find the one that suits you the most, that's the most fun, and it just gives you some options to experiment with as you play. So there's overview cards for the factions, and it's interesting, these are actually given to the other players. So as the Vagabond player, you're not going to get one of these overview cards for yourself. This is so that the other factions can just understand what their opponents are doing, so they at least kind of know how their opponents are trying to win and watch out for stopping them. So you're going to hand off one of these overview cards to each of your opponents. That's for the Vagabond. Then there's quest cards for the Vagabond as well. You have Fox, Rabbit, and Mouse quest cards. So you have quests you can do, escort, logistics help, just a lot of interesting and fun options there. So a lot going on with the Vagabond. I think that's really cool. You have a board setup example. This is for the Vagabond. I believe it's what's just listed on the back of the card, but it's nice that there's just... I'm certainly not opposed to reference cards. I think they're useful. You don't have to use them if you don't want to, but I think they're a nice include, and we have all the cards here that Hal went through already. So that actually takes us through all the components of Root. Thoughts on the overall components, quality, game board?
Good quality, good art style.
Yeah, I'm a big fan. I think I like the pieces as well, as I mentioned. I really like when a war game actually has like actual pieces or figures you can move around. I think there's a nice feel to that. It's just more satisfying than cardboard pieces. So I'm really pleased that this is a game that's gone with that. The dice being D12 is also interesting. And yeah, I think the art style is really the most notable here. I think that's what's going to draw a lot of people in, and it's just a really beautiful art style. Well, there you have it. There's everything that comes in the main game of Root.
Yeah, this is, as you saw, the box is packed really efficiently. There's a real just elegance to design, as in the box itself, the components, everything looks really clean, looks crisp, looks nice. It's packed very well, it's packed efficiently. Even the box itself, like the designs on the interior, everything just looks really nice.
Yeah, really nice art choice. I think it complements what's going on in the game, and it's also expanding the reach of the game, as we discussed in that initial video. I think adults are going to find this a nice art style for the most part, but so are children.
Yeah, I think that the art style honestly was what initially even really drew me to the game. It's really unique, it's distinct, it's different, it's flavorful, it's colorful. I think Kyle Farron's done a great job. He has an exhibit up on the website, The Art of Kyle Farron. If you're interested in his art, you can check that out. There's just a lot of really nice pieces that he's done for the game.
Yeah, so let us know if you found this video helpful, useful, interesting, and stay tuned because we're going to unbox the Riverfolk expansion in the near future.
Yeah, if you're waiting on that 6-player game, you're gonna get to see what that comes with. You're gonna get to check out the Lizard Cult, the Riverfolk company. So yeah, we'll delve into that in the next video.
And until then, thanks for watching.
Take care.